Lift up your head to the rising sun, Bahamaland. March on to glory, your bright banners waving high. See how the world wants the manner of your bearing. Pledge to exhale through love and unity, pressing onward, march together to a common lofty goal.
Welcome back to another exciting conversation here on Effective Living. I'm Coach Ricardo Miller, and let me tell you, I've been enjoying these talks. As you know, here on Effective Living, it's really all about creating a life you don't need to take a vacation from. Well, we took a pause to make some time to give attention to something that's incredible that's happening in the world, and that is the Bahamas is celebrating 50 years of independence. With that said, I wanted to talk to a few Bahamians that I wanted to go over what is their view on all things Bahamian. I wanted to hear about their views on past, present, and future. I wanted to hear what they would have to say about proud to be Bahamian. And with me joining us this evening is none other than Miss Barbara Gibson-Wilson. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. Praise God.
Hey, thank you for joining me. We have been connected on social media for a while.
My pleasure. I'm just happy to be here.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Listen, tell our viewing audience, before we dive into our talk, all things Bahamian, tell our viewing audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I'll try to do the short version.
Okay.
I'm a born-again believer in Christ, a Gibson by birth, born on the island of New Providence, Bahamas, in 1960, with roots in Baileytown, Bimini, Landrell Point, Crooked Island, and Gregorytown, Eleuthera. I'm a 1976 graduate of the government high school, a U.S.-trained registered nurse who've been employed in pharmaceutical sales now for about 25 years, and a past chairman of the Bahamas Pharmacy Council. I am an independent thinker, creative, highly engaged, and intentional when I do stuff. In whatever I do, outgoing, confident, assertive, self-motivated, and a decisive decision maker.
So good.
That's me in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it. Hey, listen, you broke that down to a T. I saw a video of you dancing, Bahamian dancing. Like, she is having a time. She's having a time. When you think of the term proud to be Bahamian, what comes to mind?
I think of my deep roots and the pride I feel whenever I think of me being a Bahamian. You know, I left the government high school at 15 years old. And I left the country right away. I went to school in Jamaica for a year, and then I went to school in Huntsville, Alabama to do nursing. And I don't think I really realized what I had as a Bahamian until I didn't have it anymore.
Okay.
And at that point, that is when the pride stepped in, because I realized who I was and where I came from. And I just think of I guess, my heritage. And in all honesty, when you really think about it, I believe most people have pride in where they come from. Because if you look at it, no matter where you go, and when you look at foreigners that come to the Bahamas, no matter how much they love being here, there's something about when you call the name of the country they come from, it's a
Yeah,
natural thing.
yeah,
The
yeah,
pride just comes out, the flags come out.
yeah, yeah.
Something that I think it's birth in us.
Good, good. Do you think patriotism for the Bahamas, though? We're a young country celebrating 50 years of independence. That's huge for us.
Right.
However, over the years, I found that in the last decade, patriotism seems to have gone to another level. What's your view on that?
I do believe that a lot of it has to do with us not taking the time to instill in our youth our heritage and where we came from. If you don't know where you came from, you certainly don't know where you're going. And you won't have that fulfilling feeling of pride, that we used to have back in the day. I do know that we've had an influx of other cultures, which may have kind of, I guess, diluted, what we had. And sometimes it does take away from that aggressive feeling to really be proud of what we have as Bahamians. And I think you're right. It's not like it used to be in that regard. But now a lot of it has come out since I think it's also up to us to really do what is necessary. Like during this 50th celebration, the government they went to great lengths,
Yeah.
to kind of bring us back to where we need to be. And I'm hoping that this is the beginning of something new.
Yeah. Sometimes the maturing factor kicks in. I know when I first came to the United States, I had my flag, but it wasn't easily accessible, right? And it appeared that the older I got, the more I became adamant about, hey, proud to be Bahamian, wearing my Bahamian pin, my flag is in all of my offices, anywhere I'm going, I'm like, hey, and so I think maybe being that we're now, let's just say 50, independent country, the whole concept of we got to make sure we are known for who we are even in the world. And so it's so easy to be lost in the world, actually. But Bahamians are proud, and I think overseas Bahamians are stepping it up. What's your view on that?
Yes. I do believe that Bahamians overseas are stepping it up. And that like you just mentioned something. I think the importance of your roots becomes a little more evident as you get older.
Yeah.
For me, I am a late bloomer, to be honest with you. I mean, I've always been proud to be a Bahamian. But when my parents died, 2 years for my father and about 5-6 years for my mother, I really begin to feel like I need to know where I came from. I need to know who they are. And I was so upset because I didn't question them more or get more details from them. Fortunately, I always use my camera, and I did get videos of them talking about their life story. And I actually started my own journey of Bahamian heritage. And I have now created a website on Facebook and YouTube where I interview Bahamians talking about their Bahamian history and their family. And so I think once you become aware of who you are, then you want to know more. And then you begin to question and ask and then encourage other people to do the same. And I think for me, that's how it worked. I'm now very interested in Bahamians and where we came from. And I have 3 generations of Bahamians on both sides.
Good stuff.
At least 3.
I love it. Now, I'm from Auckland, but my family is from Auckland, Pinefield, Auckland. So
very interesting. My grandmother was from Auckland on my father's side.
Yeah. I'm amazed by the amount of people who's from Auckland, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just an amazing island. I've been wanting to go back for a while. The distance between Auckland to New Providence and the amount of flights have been hindering that, but my sister said that's why they call it private. Go just fly private and go ahead and make it happen. Let me ask you this. When you look back over the years in the Bahamas, what has impressed you the most about our history? What there are so many things I know one can consider, but when you think about it, what comes to mind first for you?
Um, the mystique, the intrigue of the history of the Bahamas is like a story that you just sit there with your mouth open. You know, I mean, we started back in the day. Obviously, there was the Arawak Indians, and then we had the Spaniards, and then we had the pirates, and we had the Europeans, and then we had slavery, and it all just melted together. So we have so much, and the stories are just so interesting to listen to, and I feel so much pride. And then when I see where the majority came to rule, those are the things that make me feel so proud about our history and the importance of really knowing who you are, where you've been, so you can know where you're going. And majority rule took us to a point, I think, now where we can look back and be really proud about where we came from.
Good stuff. You've traveled throughout the Bahamas, and you referred to a lot of your incredible experience. What would be one of those that you would say you've had to been there? You've had to been there, but you're going to try your best to describe it for our viewers this evening.
Well, I think I have two events that I would say that I really had to be there. One of them was more influenced by my parents. As you know, I was born in 1960.
Okay.
So I was 13 years old in 1973 when that Bahamian flag went up. And I distinctly remember to this day where I stood. My mother grew up in Hospital Lane. And listen, I don't think there was any human being alive in their homes that night. The entire country was on that fort, and we stood there. I mean, I didn't know the significance of everything. I was kind of young and, not really understanding much, but everybody was determined. If there were so many cars and so many people, we had to park all the way in Hospital Lane and walk. I mean, this is 1973,
Yes.
and we stood there for hours and just listened to everything that was being said and watched the events just in awe, and I knew that was something that even if I didn't want to go, I was gonna have to be there. My parents really instilled that in me. The only other time that I could think of really that was significant to the point that I would never forget was an opportunity to be at the opening of Parliament, because it's something that it's where laws are made, Parliament, and being there, watching with pride, and being able to hear the speech from the throne was something that I never experienced. So those are two things that I would say I would always have memorized. I would always remember and always look back at something as something that I would have not want to miss.
You show up on a daily basis to me in some way that you're going to put an imprint in the day that represents me. When did that trigger kick off? When did you feel as though I am no longer just going to be about my career, my family, and my faith? I'm going to also be Bahamian. Let me say it again. It's not only about family, career, faith, even finances, and plans for the future, but I'm also going to put in there this spin on, when you see me, you see somewhat I'm going to call it a self-proclaimed ambassador. I represent the Bahamas. When did that started to turn for you at the height of what you're actually at now? Because that's how I see it.
I must honestly say that it hasn't been that long. Probably in the last 5 years after my parents died again, and I started to dig into the history of the Bahamas. The first thing I did was actually interview family members. My aunt, who's now 84, I think, and then I had uncles in their 80s and one in their 90s, and I began to visualize back in the day when my mother was a child, and I wanted to be there. And I started questioning them, and I started driving around streets that I had drove in every day of my life and never really saw it the way it is now. It's like all of a sudden it was like I just can't. I just moved here, because there were so many things that I took for granted. And then it dawned on me that there are people who are younger than me who don't know anything about the Bahamas, who don't know Nassau, who don't know who their family members are, what their heritage is. So I decided, without even thinking about it, that I would be that person to
Yeah.
just push whatever Bahamian thing that I could get to just, between the Bahamian heritage videos and anything that I see that's Bahamian, I try to promote because I
So
want our young people to know where they came from because I think that is important in knowing where we're going.
so good. Let me ask you this: when you look at the Bahamas, what concerns you? Let's take a few minutes and talk about that. When you're like, okay, proud to be Bahamian, all things Bahamas. But looking back, there are a few things that concerns me, and probably even for the next generation, they would probably take a cue from you after listening to something like this and say, you know what, I never thought of it that like that, and maybe I need to start doing better. But what concerns you?
Well, I do believe that our faith in God has wavered quite a bit, and materialism is the order of the day. And once you become materialistic, crime becomes an issue because very often people will do whatever it takes to get where they want to be. There was back in the day when we might not have had much, but we were striving, and there's nothing wrong with striving to do better but we did it the right way. People helped each other more. There was a lot more camaraderie and willingness to work together. If somebody's hungry, you fed them. If someone needed clothes, and we it was almost like a big community or a big family. And I think we've lost quite a bit of that. And a lot of it, I think, just stems from our pulling away from our relationship with God and our belief and our faith. Back in the day, as a child, I don't recall anybody ever telling me that they were an atheist. And
Right.
now it seems like it's common, and it's shocking because in the Bahamas, while not everybody went to church every Sunday, but most people did, and everybody had a belief in God. So I think what has been lost is our faith in God, and also I believe that we've become materialistic. I mean, come on now. You could get anything you want in life, but you can't take it with you.
Right. So good.
And there are more
You
important
know,
things, I think.
with you saying the element of faith in God, I can recall everyone that I knew had a church, even if they didn't go to it. We all claim a church.
Hmm.
And now, lately, I was home not so
Right.
long, and I asked a driver. I said, "Hey, so which church do you go to? Which church? What's your family church?" And there was a young guy. He said, "Well, I don't have a church." What do you mean you don't have a church? I mean, what's your family church? And it's like even if you don't have a church, there was a time I felt as though we all claimed a church that would be considered even our family church. That seems to have
Yes.
gone away.
Hmm. It, it,
Let's
it
let's talk
definitely has. Yeah.
let's talk about education.
Hmm.
Long years ago, I mean, I'm gonna say it that way. I found that there was this strong push on education. I think growing up as a boy, I wasn't one of the kids who got the message at that time. Clearly, I messed up. I didn't do well at
Trust
all.
me, neither did I.
But
I was
somewhere
not a straight A student.
right, but somewhere along the line, I figured out it's a part of the message that was trying to be passed on. I didn't quite get it, but I saw that there was a generation that had a greater level of commitment to continual education and get those BJCs, get those BGCSE, which they've now called it, or GCE at one time. What's your view on education and continual education for young Bahamians and Bahamians at large in regards to the world we're living in?
But what I do believe is that we have lost that quest for education in the Bahamas. Now, I'm not saying that we do not have a good education system because I believe that we do. I believe everything that we need is in place. But
Yeah,
what is now lacking is from the home, the aspect of children being encouraged to take advantage of what is available with parents who seemingly don't care. And very often the children are done, they do whatever. I mean, there was a shocking statistic recently that talked about the employed persons in the Bahamas and how something like 45% of them had not completed high school. And this is really shocking. I mean, years ago, everybody went to at least finish high school. And
Yeah.
most people aspire to go to college.
Right.
Parents literally saved up their entire lives to.
Yeah.
I mean, my mother was one of them. My
Yeah.
mother was determined that her two daughters was going to go to school and have an education, and
Yeah.
she did everything that she could to make that happen, and she did. So I think it, like I said, it's not that we have an excellent education system. My sister's a high school teacher. She worked at the government high school, and I know that we do. Teachers work hard. Everything is in place, but it's up to the children and their parents to take advantage of it.
That is so true. So good. Let's talk about what is that. I want to push and give emphasis on this. Please don't lose this, Bahamas. What comes to mind? This whole concept of, hey, I hope we don't lose this. And some of it may have already started to look like we're going the wrong way. But if you had your way, what is it that we must not lose? And maybe a few things may come to mind, but give your emphasis on those things we have to keep.
Please do not lose your identity. Don't lose our identity. Don't lose our heritage. Don't lose the knowledge of where we came from. Don't lose our faith in God. And I think the identity part of it is pertinent because again, we are now becoming a melting pot. There's persons here from all cultures,
Yeah.
and it's gotten to the point, and it's frightening when you begin to realize that at some point there may be more of them than there are of us.
Yeah.
We don't want that. We need to be intentional in seeing to it that our identity is kept, that our heritage is strong, and that we keep our faith in God.
So good. So good. When you look at the Bahamas, what do you foresee when it comes to the region and us establishing ourselves as a beacon of light? As we've always been strong in the region, but future Bahamas, what do you see? How should we be developing ourselves as a country to continue to stay a strong representation in CARICOM and the Western Hemisphere?
Two words come to mind: self-sufficiency. We are now celebrating 50 years of independence. Unfortunately, we are anything but independent. I see a future where we can feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, build our own homes, provide for ourselves. And of course, no country is 100%. You know, everybody, it's like a world. We need each other. But we have to come to the point where we think outside the box and go beyond tourism, diversify, find out what can we do to see to it that if everybody cut us off, we would still live. And of course, that's a difficult thing. I mean, the
Right.
world is now having a hard time finding ways to feed ourselves. There's just the population has exploded, and now we are literally trying to do GMOs to try feed ourselves. So I know it's not easy, but where there's a will, there's a way, and especially when you have faith in God.
So good, so good. I've enjoyed this talk. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching us on YouTube, if you're watching us on Facebook, you gotta share this. Okay. My goal with this was to stir up the minds and hearts of other Bahamians, not only in the Bahamas but around the world, and just for conversation's sake, bring some things to the table that would have others to start thinking like what we have talked about. So, in closing, what would you say and how would you challenge Bahamians? We're about to embark on this day, Independence Day, 50 years of independence. What do you say in closing?
I would say let us use the hype of this 50th celebration to realize that we can do a lot more than we have been, that we can go wherever we want to go, that we can do whatever we need to do if we work together, strong, and that if we keep our faith in God, we can move ahead and start from the 50th to a new beginning.
So good. Ladies and gentlemen, well, there you have it. Barbara Gibson-Wilson, she delivered, and she delivered just as she always does. I'm so grateful for this opportunity that we've had to be able to talk. We got to do this again. I'm going to have a Bahamian emphasis day where I'm going to do a series of talk. It's going to be like a praise-a-thon. And I'm going to have you back because I need to have you back and talk about some other things that I think needs to be brought to the forefront in regards to all things Bahamian. So once again, thank you so much for being a part of this talk this evening. Have a great evening.
Thank you too.